Tēnā tātou ko whakarauika mai ki tēnei kaupapa, te podcast tuatahi, kua whakarauika mai tōku hua, Ngaa Rauuiraa Puumanawawhiti. What's up guys? Tēnā kua whakahua mai, ko ai koe, no hea koe.
Tēnā koe rangipare, ko Ngaa Rauuiraa Puumanawawhiti tōku ingoa, whānau mai e iotaki, no roto mai o Ngāti Raukawa.
Okay, cool. He's keeping it real brief, whānau. I think for the interest of this kaupapa that we're about to delve into, can you give us a bit of a background of yourself, where you come from, what your upbringing was like, and where we're at the moment?
So probably again born in Otaki, my father's side Ngāti Raukawa, affiliates to Ngāti Tūkore he te atia o Ngāti Ngaa Rauuiraa, Ngāti Tō Rangatira. But otherwise was the subject of a whānanga by my grandparents, as has been the case, or as is the tikanga in my family, as you might sort of put it. The oldest tamaiti is always taken by the grandparents to be groomed and to sort of be brought up by our old people, and so that's what happened to me. Moved into Ngāti Kahungunu to my grandfather's side, and from there exposure to the motu. You know, I reflect on my times growing up with my grandparents. I can confidently say that I've been to a marae in every single rohe of the country through the simple act of attending a tangihanga. And so that'll be one of the lasting gifts or legacies that my grandparents gave me, is that I'm actually familiar and quite aware of the motu. Like, I have an idea of the cultural spaces that I'm navigating, and that's their enduring gift. But otherwise, subject of whāngai, kura kaupapa through and through. And like, was it so probably to
where did
take
you
a
go,
step
bro?
back? Yeah,
where did you go?
Take a step. Well, so in terms of kura kaupapa, started out at Te Rito in Otaki, Ngāti Kahungunu ki Te Arohau, and then I finished up at Ngāti Kahungunu ki Te Taunga. If I take one step back, in 2009 and 10 I was the subject of a documentary, and that documentary, Maaori Boy Genius, it gave viewers, our people, Indigenous audiences throughout the world an opportunity to ask themselves a key question, and it allowed us to examine and critically analyse the nature of our true genius. And that's important, and it's important for this reason. If viewers, those of us who saw the documentary, walked away from that film thinking that the genius existed inside the individual, the subject of the film, I invite you to go and watch it again, because that's actually not the point of the film. What it shows is the genius of our Indigenous systems. Ko ngā reo, kura kaupapa, whare wānanga Māori. Those are the systems of genius that produce genius. And so that's my key message to our people, is that the film itself gives us an opportunity to critically analyse the nature of our true genius, which I think we'll hear more about throughout this discussion.
Awesome! Thank you so much, Ngaa Rauuiraa. I have the privilege to call Ngaa Rauuiraa one of my friends here in Waikato, but he's usually quite modest about the things that he's done and the places he's been and the things he's seen. So this is genuinely like a true treasure that you've shared this tonga with us, and it's just your lived experience, because I genuinely think we have the right to be selective with what we do divulge about ourselves, but because I don't know, just through us being friends, we've trusted that this kaupapa will genuinely help encourage maybe one of you to think more deeply about maybe your purpose and stuff. So shot for that, bro.
Good.
So great lead into our kaupapa.
Yeah.
First thing, watch Maaori Boy Genius. Ngaa Rauuiraa, star of the show, 16 years old. And then we'll lead into our pātai, which is, I'm really interested in, I've noticed just indigeneity, our worldview has become so trendy and topical at the moment. Just like our whakaaro has been branded as like holistic well-being, or this and this and this. I want to know from an Indigenous perspective, a Māori perspective, what you think it is to be an Indigenous person.
This is a fantastic question. By way of context, so I fundamentally believe that tātou te iwi Māori, right, ko tātou te teina, o te ao iwi take, right? So we're the youngest, you'd say, whakapapa group of the indigenous family tree. Like, you know, our wāhi tapu, they're about 1,000 years old compared to our Aboriginal whānau next door, 80,000 years old. To the Lakota, our whānau over in Turtle Island, 60,000 years old. And so in that way, I truly believe we're the Māori of the global indigenous community whānau. So just probably to start there. So on that note, e kore rawa, e kore mōku tuakana, right?
Yeah, kia ora.
Mindful that and we have a role as the Pōtiki, as the Māori, as the agitator, as the innovator. And we play that quite well, and again, we'll probably get into that further into the discussions.
Kia ora.
In fact, it's the reason why we're the adoration of the global indigenous community, is because we shake the cage, we're the Māori of the global indigenous community. So that said, for me, to me, and it sort of speaks to this idea of being a good tupuna, is that for me, being an indigenous person, but being an indigenous Māori, is about continuing to sow the seeds, iruia mai i rangi Aotearoa. The seeds of tradition, the seeds of whakapapa, the seeds of language. That as an indigenous person, it's important to continue that those seeds of indigeneity continue to thrive and to continue to be sown into the garden beds of our Māori futures going forward into the 21st century. And so it's this whakaaro that, you know, our tupuna said, e kore au e ngaro, I'll never be lost. And my position is, e kore rawa koe e ngaro, we'll make sure of that. And we'll make sure that by ensuring that there is a permanent indigenous presence on this earth. I'm not sure if we're there yet. I'm not sure if we can confidently say that we'll still be here in 10 centuries' time. But being a good tupuna is about ensuring that you continue to sow the seeds of indigeneity so that our mokopuna and our uri know that their grandfather, their grandmother gave them a fighting chance to be a Māori in the 23rd, 4th, 5th, 6th century. That the seeds of indigeneity continue to endure forevermore. And that is what I think being a good indigenous person is ensuring that that gift, iruia mai rangi Aotearoa, that has been bequeathed to every indigenous daughter and son, continues to proliferate and to endure forevermore.
So I think that sort of touches on like some of the discussions we've had behind the scenes just as friends. So you're born with, not with what, Ngā Rauiraa?
Whānau?
No, responsibility.
Responsibilities, of course, sorry.
Yeah.
So your responsibilities preclude your rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're always, others would say, greater thinkers than I would say, that your rights are an extension of your responsibilities.
Kia ora ngā. Awesome discussion. I just want to know, like, this is a bit, so I sent a brief in advance, but I want to know just from your own personal whakaaro what you think. Was there like a defining moment that made you like click and realise, holy shit, this is actually our purpose as Indigenous people, as stewards, as kaitaki of this whenua? Like, was there one specific moment, or was it?
Yeah. To be honest, I think subconsciously, my whānau and my community was always planting that seed. You know, reflection now as an adult. I think about it. I'd be stupid to say that there was no influence by my environment, by the people around me, by those people I loved, cared for. But I do remember there was a time at Te Wānanga Raukawa, and this is grateful that others had the vision in my growth that I didn't have or didn't even believe in. And there was a moment when I was sitting in my first Te Tiriti o Waitangi class, and not only did I love the information that was before me, but one thing became fundamentally clear to me at 13 years old, or 12 years old, sorry, yeah. And it was that history shows that one can never ever break the fighting spirit of the Māori people to survive and thrive. How do we know that? You and I are speaking here today. Tauatahi I puta mai I ngā taonga o ngā tupuna, te kohanga reo te kurikaupapa, ngā mātua, ngā whawhai o rātou. And so, what is apparent, and I come back to this being the Māori of the global Indigenous community, that's fundamentally why we are the adoration of the global Indigenous world, is because we're that group down in the Pacific that just won't just give up. And history shows you can never ever break the fighting spirit of the Māori people, and I say that again.
No, I totally agree, you know. The Māori language, the whenua march, everything, ngā tamatua, we've just seen it historically, and even now, like there's been a trend of Rangatahi who are just advocating for Indigenous rights. It's really uplifting. And going into that, bro, I wanted to know what he's very humble whānau, but he's a very well-read person. So I just wanted to know what your whakaaro was on, or is, on the current state of things at the moment, whether that be politically, whether that be taiaone, whether that be regionally, nationally, internationally. What are your general whakaaro on the state of affairs at present?
Yeah, probably if I just focus my way home, like, you know, there's a whole lot of kaupapa currently before us, for everything from the taiao to kaupapa tangata to kaupapa Wairua. And I look, you know, just in the last month, we have the oranga tamariki situation, you know, and it's, you know, Ngā Tūmanako said we need a toa tū taua for te reo Māori. And actually, we need a toa tū taua mō ngā tātou tamariki. It's about adopting those fundamental beliefs. I can't change the world. I may not even be able to change the Māori people, but I can change and transform my 5Ks beyond comprehension. I can definitely get to the first 50 kids in my hapu before the system does. And so, you know, that scene in Hastings prompted conversations throughout the motu, and the greatest of our leaders have come together, you know, and with such fervour. It's the same fervour we saw, you know, in the foreshore seabed. It became an unacceptable situation that we could no longer tolerate. Good, because you know what? Change never happens in positions of comfort. It happens in positions of discomfort, when the current situation no longer becomes tenable and there is no sense of choice. Change is the only choice. So good that our people are uncomfortable, because that's where the growth lies, that's where the change happens. The change agent isn't in the comfort, it's in the discomfort. And I urge our people to consider and critically analyse that comfort, you know, and again reflect on the nature of our true genius to be able to solve the fundamental challenges of our time.
And I just want to acknowledge, though you've talked about how you've lightly touched on, there's like been this quiet awakening amongst the Māori people. I feel like it's actually spread into our non-Māori whānau within Aotearoa. I was just listening to Radio New Zealand today, and they were talking about making te reo Māori you know, compulsory language in the curriculum. And this fella Ben from Radio New Zealand, shout out to you, bro, he was actually not adverse to it, whereas if this was maybe 5 years ago even, it would be like, no, that's so prescriptive, blah blah blah. So what are your whakaaro like? Have you noticed there's been a shift with Pākehā attitudes towards our worldview? Because I've definitely seen that they acknowledge that Māoridom is actually what makes people from New Zealand stand out in an international, you know, forum. How whakaaro mo te?
Well, the truth of the rangipare is that Aotearoa is the only home of the Māori language. And if te reo Māori cannot call Aotearoa its home, it has no home. Then that's the brutal truth. And you know, I was in denial a lot about some of Timothy's findings. So he famously released a paper where he said some fundamental things. He said, you know, the Māori language will never ever be the majority language or the dominant language of the Māori people. That's the first thing I couldn't get over. The second thing he said was, therefore, invest all the resources into the group of people who want to, you know, who are inspired to learn. Not the shotgun approach of resourcing anybody to teach and to learn te reo Māori. Commit those resources, if any, to the small dedicated group who will allow it to thrive. And then what that does is it forces us to consider a fundamental question, and it's this: will you be alright with the fact that the survival of te reo Māori might not even be in our Māori hands, it might be in the hands of others? Will we be okay with that? And if the answer is no, ka hakoe.
Step up. Aye.
Stay in the discomfort or transform.
Hold on. That's pretty much much what we're saying, bro.
And can I just clarify, like, you know, obviously I speak from a position of privilege. I wasn't there to fight the fight. I was literally born into the world. And everybody was like this. You know, Autaki is a bubble, right? You know, see, like, I grew up in the world, and everybody speaks Māori, you know, like, so I say that from a position of privilege, and the fact is that we were not there to fight the fight when it was required, and so we're born into the fruits of that labour. And so they say it takes one generation to, you know, to fight for it, one generation, you know, fight for it, achieve it, second generation to maintain it, and the third generation to squirrel it away.
Wow.
Okay, and so these fundamental, you know, like kaitiaki, tangatino, rangatiratanga, they exist insofar as you choose for them to exist. You know, your mana exists so far as you have the power to defend it.
Kia ora, Ngā Rauiraa, we're back again, whānau. So I just wanted to delve into something that I think requires some definite whakaaro, and not just with us, but if you can think of things at home, then I encourage you to do that. But I just wanted to know what you thought about what are 3 universal themes that you can see occurring across the isle, not just here in Aotearoa, but everywhere. Yeah.
Well, so we saw say in the American South, the removal of statues, the proposed removal of statues. We see the suggestion that street names here in Aotearoa, which bear the name of colonising ancestors, that these be removed. And to be honest, for me, there's a concurrent theme running here, and it really comes to a head at a regional level, at an international level, of the upcoming Cook commemorations, the Tuia 2050 work, and they're all interrelated. This idea that those street names should be removed, the idea that symbols of colonising ancestors be removed, and they come to a head with these the Cook events. We're having this interview on Cook Street that comes off Grey Street. Grey Street comes off Anzac Parade, which comes off Victoria Street. And so this colonial colonisation is literally embedded into the civic planning and the town planning of our societies, and of our communities. And they have these things in common, the single thing in common. It's about the battle for the historical narrative, point blank. That's what it's about. It's about the battle for his story and who is telling it.
Kia ora.
And of course we know that, you know, history is always written by the winners, and often it's a colonizer. And so and it comes to a head even further with the struggle up at Maunakea, Te Maunga ki reira, and the irony of the lasting legacy of this telescope, you know, and how it represents a 250-year colonial project, you know, which really began with Cook and others like him, Cortez, Columbus. They operated under the doctrine of discovery, this absolute fundamental belief in white superiority. And that's what we have to remember here, is they came here with a mission and an absolute belief in their right to colonize and take resources, people, and whenua. And so the what's important is throughout these events is that our people have an opportunity to be on both sides of history. And so what we see currently throughout the motu are mixed, divided views. And to be honest, I think part of that speaks to whether your hapu, your iwi in particular, had a positive or negative experience with them, you know. And like, there are those iwi out there, they have positive experiences with Cook, therefore there's positive narratives. You know, and I think that's awesome for your 20Ks. But the people of Kiwa and for the people of Maui, there's a collective response here, and there's a collective position here. And so, you know, it's really important that we stand with our Indigenous brothers and sisters, because heaps of them are calling out to us, you know, and again, because we are the Maui agitator of the global Indigenous community, people look to us for that fearlessness and for that leadership. You and I know this, we've experienced this overseas, but it's this absolute mandate to drive Indigenous solutions for the 21st century. Coming back to the battle for the historical narrative, this is about a juvenile country, a very young country coming to age, and these are the growing pains of a nation. And what's important to understand here is this is not an opportunity for us to tell our story. We have always been telling our stories. The only reason why we still have that history is because we never stopped. We certainly didn't do that as a result of Crown innovations and as a result of Crown funding. And I don't buy the line that this is an opportunity to tell our story. We never stop. It's about correcting the story, the official record. That's the issue here. And fundamentally, that's what Cook it like. Nobody cares. Like to tell you the truth, your average New Zealander probably doesn't care about Cook. What Cook is, what Grey is, what Bryce is, what all of these Pākehā symbols, to be honest, of European dominance are exactly that. They are symbols of European power and the European right to be here. That's what Cook is in Aotearoa. You take away Cook's place, you take away the place of settler New Zealand to be on this whenua. And that's what this is about. Most of the people protesting in favour of Cook, they don't care about him. They care that he's a representation of white superiority and identity in Aotearoa. And that's what you're really attacking when you challenge those celebrations. And you know what? Good on you. I'll be one of them.
Kia ora, bro. No, I just can't agree more with any of your whakaaro, and we had an earlier discussion about the synergy of these kaupapa. So we have Tuia 250 happening in Gisborne with the celebrations there. We have Mauna Kea. Oh man, just want to send out aroha. It's actually currently happening right now. Our whānau are standing at the front line, but I just do want to acknowledge that you talk about this historical narrative correction that you're talking about. I do literally, and I think a lot of us feel a sense of responsibility. I'll be honest with you, whānau. We've had dreams about some of our Indigenous whānau. Just earlier today, some of my whānau from Hawaii who were on the front line at Mauna Kea video called in and just gave us an update, wanted to see what we were doing as allies, we're their taina whānau. So
we're the people of Maui.
We are. So I just want to emphasise that what Ngā Rauiraa is saying is about this historical correction. I think Māori have a huge role to play in this. And if it's not directly, like on the front lines, like what our Hawaiian whānau are doing, it's definitely supporting and acknowledging our privilege. So we're very fortunate to have a very small island where we can congregate and we can speak freely together and mobilise, where some of our whānau, Lakota for instance, they don't have that privilege, so we have to be able to use it. So short bro, I just want to acknowledge that whakaaro because I totally agree wholeheartedly. Did you have any other two sort of narratives that you think, or themes that are running through universally at the moment?
Yeah, that's a great just sort of probably subject to lead off of. You and I, last year we attended the Global Indigenous Summit for Water. And so in that way, water's become a very topical, as you would know, as a, te uri o Ngāti Awa, water's become a very topical issue. Waikato is currently going for its regional plan change, again water allocation an issue. And so fundamentally we see water as becoming a more prominent issue in our lifetime, and it might be again one that requires an Indigenous solution for the 21st century.
Kia ora. I'm definitely saying that. Just to touch briefly on water extraction that's happening in Ngāti Awa and Otakiri. Ngā Rauiraa played a big role in supporting us to go over to Geneva in 2018 to present an intervention. So I just wanted to mahi to him. So he's not just someone that comes up with whakaaro or reads things and doesn't take action. He's actually a part of, when you can, because it's important, whānau, it's important to acknowledge your own capacity and what your wairua can handle. He's a big part of a lot of change and a lot of mobilisation that's happening in Ngai Māori. So I just want to acknowledge you and your wahine, tata, kia ora tata, kia ora tata, for allowing this taonga, bro, you, to be in our lives. So, shot bro. I need one more though. I need one more theme, please, just anything you think that's quite, so that we've got historical, the rewriting, narrative, We've got water, which is probably linked with taiao, so climate change for any non-Indigenous person, all of that's connected to us. So just taiao and the environment.
Yeah.
So what's one more that you can see that's quite prevalent at the moment?
So probably what's been prevalent for our people since 1840, really, is, you know, time and time again, whether it be water extraction, whether it be seabed mining, whether it be oranga tamariki, whether it be any of these issues, environmental, social, cultural, at its heart, again, what they all have in common is there's an issue with power. Point blank, there's an issue with power. And so one of the key themes that we'll probably dissect a little bit further into this conversation is what is fundamentally clear again for me is that we need a constitutional vision. We need a reset of the power imbalance created by colonisation. That needs to be corrected, and the only way it can be done is through a charter for change, a plan, a vision, a constitutional vision that enshrines, for example, the rights of Papa Tuanuku as a guide for formal decision making throughout Aotearoa, that enshrines te tiriti. Again, we'll talk about this in more detail, but my last recurring theme is that until you have a constitutional solution in place for Aotearoa, we will always experience a power struggle over te reo Māori, over things like housing, over things like employment, over things that anything that affects our lives.
So Ngā, yes, why don't you just suggest yourself? While we've talked about some recurring things that have happened and the state of affairs at the moment, I just want to know, because we're real solutions based around here whānau, do you think that if you could narrow them down to three, are there three Indigenous solutions for the 21st century that you could see that would directly influence the things that we're currently facing?
Yep. So just a quick disclaimer, like I've been told before, it's far out, it's never going to happen, it's too hard, it's too this, that's too, New Zealand's not there. But like,
by who?
Oh, like
older people.
Just, I mean, yeah, of course, yeah. The status quo, obviously, like they'll always protect its own interests. But so what I'm about to say might be very hard to believe that it's even achievable. So just a quick disclaimer. But again, my quick response to that before I start is to say, like, and what? Like, that's a real answer. Like, I could just best lie down and die. Like, so no, I don't accept that at all. And the solution I'm about to propose is the only choice. And it's this. And so, like, again, with reference to the last conversation we had, fundamentally, I believe a constitutional vision and solution for this country is required. We need a constitution that places Papa Tuanuku at the heart of our political decision making. We need an example that mirrors a constitutional framework arrangement that mirrors that of Bolivia, where they fundamentally constitutionalized the rights of Pachamama. And in the same way, and this leads on to my vision for the place of Te Tiriti Waitangi as a guide for political decision making throughout this country, but it's to place those two things at the heart of our political constitution as a solution, and to empower those two key taonga with the absolute right to protect its own fundamental values. So what I mean by that, I've long advocated for a constitutional solution where, again, in part now, don't mistake this as a praise for that system, but in the US constitutional system, the Supreme Court, right, its role is to be the kaitiaki of the US Constitution, right, which is responsible for enshrining the rights of their citizens, right. So the role of the Supreme Court is to be the kaitiaki of the Constitution. It has the power to strike down any major legislation or decision made by either the president, the executive branch, or the legislature. Right? So because its fundamental job is to protect the US Constitution, my solution is that Te Tiriti o Waitangi and Papa Tuanuku be afforded with the same constitutional recognition. The only way that you're going to prevent decisions that breach Te Tiriti o Waitangi or that breach the rights of Papa Tuanuku is to set into the Constitution an arrangement where those decisions can't even be made in the first place, and that's how you will phase out the role of the Waitangi Tribunal. is that if the treaty can't even be breached in the first place. And that was my challenge in my submission to the Crown Māori Relations Office, to Calvin Davis's office. It was, look, if there's one thing that this office can achieve, it's no new breaches of Te Tiriti o Waitangi in the 21st century, no new acts of raupatu in the 21st century. So you can promise that te pai ngātu, but I suspect the minister will have a challenge on his hands. And so to that effect, I am proposing that the first major solution is a papatuanuku based constitution for Aotearoa. Second to that is a Te Tiriti based constitution for Aotearoa. And then third, obviously the only things that will achieve these two things is a fundamental shift and transformation in our constitution. And I say the word transformation over and over again because we don't need reformation, we need transformation. And reform is important. I'm not looking for constitutional reform. To me it's rubbish, because reform is about changing or reforming existing parts of the constitution. We need something transformative that is fundamentally different. And we need a constitution based on Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the rights of papatuanuku, among other things.
Kia ora, Ngā Rauiraa. I couldn't agree with you more. We've heard it, I feel like it's turned into a buzzword at the moment. What's good for Māori is what's good for Aotearoa. But I wholeheartedly believe that, based on what our values are. We believe, we don't, so our whenua isn't asset based, it isn't something for us to commercialise or to gain profit from. So that's literally what will benefit the next generation.
And if I could retranslate that into a global context, it'll be indigenous solutions that will save humanity.
Kia ora. And whānau, I couldn't agree more. I feel like I've been the annoying like niece who's been poking all my colleagues and saying, whānau. So I couldn't express more tautoko to this whakaaro, bro. And I guess in closing, with all of the mātauranga that you've shared with us tonight, I just want to know, hangaia to our theme of our kaupapa, is there any tea that you'd like to spill with ngai rangatahi, with ngai pakehe, with ngai mātakitaki rānei, e pāna ki tēnei, so to do with this or to do with anything? So what's your biggest learnings that you've attained through your lived experience? Short, but age doesn't define leadership, whānau. Kia ora.
Probably two major things. The first major theme is, often as you're young, you're surrounded by, again, if you're privileged like ourselves, yourself and myself, you are surrounded by a whānau, a community, an iwi, that fundamentally believes in you and supports you. And often you may not even believe in the things that you are capable of. You yourself, the gifted person you are, may lack a vision for your own growth and development. And so my key learning now being 25 is you have to trust in your mentors and the leaders who are trying to grow your leadership, because often they may be able to see your potential that you can't even see. And there is a point where you kind of just have to go with it and trust that your community and those who groomed you believe that you are capable of these things, even if you don't. That's the first one. The second one is the change making process is fraught with challenges and hardship and sacrifice, right? And and again, you and I have experienced this, raising 35k in 2 weeks to send a group of Rangatahi over to Geneva to advocate for Indigenous voices. That takes, you must offer flesh, because sacrifice closes the distance between your dreams and reality. Sacrifice is the price of success. And so if I can say, in addition to that, this pathway towards kaupapa, the undertaking of kaupapa, people will laugh at you, they will mock you, they will ridicule you, then they'll hate you, and then after that they will follow you to the end. And my if I could say one thing to my 16-year-old self, it would be, have the strength to resist, do the tawhiao and draw your aukati line in the sand. Draw your line in the sand and quickly figure out what is it that you're prepared to fight and die for. Draw your line at the sand, meet your opponents, and then fight and die at your line. And so I've decided that's Te Reo Māori. Through the events of the Oranga Tamariki, saga throughout the last weeks. That's my whānau, that's my
wow.
hapu. It's te rui, ngā kākano I rui a mai rangiatia, my language tradition, my knowledge tradition.
Kia ora.
These are my lines in my sand that I am drawing to ensure a permanent Indigenous presence on this earth. Kia kore rawe I ki a kua ngaro, te kākano I rui a mai rangiatia. And that's, again, to my last point, is what being a good tupuna is all about, is ensuring that the seeds of indigeneity continue to be sown into the garden beds of our future to thrive and to endure forever.